All right, everybody, we are live, and welcome back to another weekly show of us rejects just sitting around and talking movies. And we've been talking Halloween movies because it is spooky season, and we are joined here by one of our favorite guests ever. Matter of fact, my first guest ever, Kevin Michael Polly, and he has brought a friend. Uh, Now, do you want to call him Creature or Gillman? Because I know they're both.
I just go with Creature because
Creature.
It's the title of the film.
Well, we are also here with Cody. Sir, how are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. There's a great book written by Mallory O'Mara about the person who designed the creature from the Black Lagoon, and it was a female. It was like one of the 1st women in special effects and makeup in the industry doing that kind of work, and it's a really fascinating.
Like it's only been in the past couple of years that she's really gotten her due for that work, but we were saying before the broadcast, I think the creature is the best of the Universal monsters because it is such an actual like monster, and that design is iconic. I mean, it's just there's nothing else like it.
Sounds like a Bill Finger Batman situation that kind of happened there. But anyway, we also joined by my lovely wife. She's here with us off to the side as usual. No one can see us, but Mike can hear us.
It's good. I'm gonna need to get her opinion on Tom Atkins's ladies' man. Like, is he really a ladies' man, or just could anyone be a ladies' man in the 80s?
No, you shut your whore mouth. Tom Atkins is everything that is man.
Even with his road beers.
With his road beers. That's what makes him even more of a man.
He smells of Sex Panther because 60% of the time it works.
No. He smells of Marlboros and Coors Light.
Yes. Well, if you're wondering what we're talking about, guys, we are here talking this week Halloween 3.
Season of the Witch.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3. So
Dream Warriors.
Yes, we're coming in with the threequels, hitting you hard with the threes this week. So, Kevin, which one would you like to start off with first?
I thought we would go in order of release. So I thought we would start with Halloween 3 Season of the Witch since it came out in 83 and Nightmare 3 was 87.
Let's do it.
Great. Let's do it. So, what are your thoughts on Season of the Witch? This has been a movie that has gone from being reviled to now it's considered a Halloween institution to watch right alongside the original Halloween. And I remember when I got into scary movies and I rented the first Halloween, then I watched the second Halloween. I believe it was my brother or somebody else was like, well, don't watch part 3. That's trash. It has nothing to do with Michael Myers or anything. I don't know what this movie is. And then I remember around 2002. So this is how long the resurgence of this movie. It was in a issue of Cinescape magazine for anybody that remembers getting movie news before you had Wi-Fi connection. They did a whole special on the films of 82, and one of the films listed was Season of the Witch, and they talked about how it was actually a good horror movie and how, it was because John Carpenter's still involved in the franchise at this point, which he never wanted to do a sequel, but because the movie was so successful and Friday the 13th would not exist without Halloween success. They wanted a sequel. And they did it, even though Carpenter wasn't happy with it. And he's like, if I'm doing one more, it's got to be something different or I'm putting Michael Myers in space. And they were like, okay, write your story. And so here we are. It's an anthology film that takes place at Halloween. But that's it. That's the only connection it has with the franchise is that it's just set at Halloween.
And there are commercials for the original movie that pop up during the actual film.
Right.
And that's pretty ballsy. That's a pretty ballsy move when you look at it. And
it's pretty meta. Yeah, it's pretty meta.
From a franchise standpoint, because the bigwigs are like, okay, money, money, money. How can we milk this next? And then he's like, anthology series that doesn't even have Michael Myers. And I know that was a shock to a lot of people, when it was released. So
I'll stand by the saying that I've had for years, and I know other people have said it too. If that film gets released as just Season of the Witch, it's a minor hit. No doubt in my mind, it's a minor hit. But because it was tagged with the death knell that was Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, that's what really hurt the film, because nobody knew that the game plan was to create a whole new anthology series that has nothing to do with Michael Myers. All the gore hounds, all the horror heads, they were all just like, all right, another Michael Myers. And this time it's got witches or whatever. Like, all right, bring it on. They were not prepared for it. But if that film just gets released as John Carpenter's Season of the Witch, that film makes 25, 30 mil easy. There's no doubt in my mind. Because you look at all the quality ingredients that are in that film, because like you've got it's produced by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. Okay. You've got a storyline by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. You've got cinematography by Dean Cundy, who shot the original and shot The Fog and shot The Thing and shot Escape from New York. Dean Cundy's a stud. And you've got him. You've got the soundtrack by John Carpenter and Alan Holworth. So you've got that going on. You've got a fantastic cast: Tom Atkins, Eder Herlihy, Stacey Nelkin. You've got, a great atmosphere, a really cool concept for what's going on here. Everything on paper says this film should have been some form of hit. It should be have been revered from the word go. And yet, because of two words, or a word and a number, however you want to phrase it, Halloween 3, the film just got absolutely lambasted. And I'm so glad that in the past, 20 years, it's gotten the appreciation that it deserves. Because is it a perfect film? No. But it's an insanely fun movie for this time of year. I mean, it has so many things you want in a spoopy time movie, and it's all just right there. It's so much fun if you just go for the ride. Don't take it seriously. Just enjoy the atmosphere. Just enjoy the crazy, batshit crazy story that it has to unfold. I mean, it's got Celtic lore. It's got, Stonehenge. It's got robots. Like, it's insane, but it's awesome. It's so much fun, and I'm really glad we can talk about it tonight. And I feel like all four of us are coming from a spot where there's a level of appreciation for it that hasn't been there, that wasn't there when it first hit.
Yeah, I even wonder if they just called it Halloween Season of the Witch, or Halloween Presents Season of the Witch. Had they just left the number 3 off the title,
if they would have done their homework to market to people to say, hey, this is going to be an anthology series now, it has nothing to do with Michael Myers, if they would have done their homework for that, possibly. But I still think just released as John Carpenter's Season of the Witch, it makes bank. I mean, I really feel like it makes bank, because he'd already been on a roll with Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York. Now, granted, The Thing was not a hit, but it definitely was, from horror heads, it was definitely a talked about film. So he'd had a really good track record up to that point, and I think most horror fans would have gone with him to see a movie that he made that takes place during Halloween, that was released near Halloween. Even if it's not called Halloween, they would go with him, I think, to check it out. So if it's just Season of the Witch, I really believe it's a hit that brings in 20 to 30 million easy.
You mentioned the soundtrack. I gotta say, it slaps. It's great.
Oh, it's awesome.
It
is awesome. It's so atmospheric. It's so it's such a great John Carpenter score, is what it really is. It's a great John Carpenter score, and Alan Howarth as well. They both work together beautifully. Howarth has done many of the films, that Carpenter's worked on. They get each other. That film has a soundtrack that just really captures that early 80s vibe, man. It's a great A soundtrack.
Yeah, it's got the synth. It's moody. It matches the atmosphere of the film. And I would argue, could be controversial, I might think this is a better score than the original Halloween, because the original Halloween pretty much is the one title track for the most of the movie.
Right.
As far as an actual soundtrack, I can see exactly where you're coming from on that. Sure, I really can. It is like you said, it's very layered. It's very atmospheric. And it does a really good job of capturing the sense of, and I think that's what the film really does well. There's just this impending sense of dread. It just really feels like this is not going to, like, they're not going to get out of this. This is not going to end well. And it doesn't. Like, technically it doesn't. So it really does a good job of pushing the narrative forward with this moody, creepy, dreadful, vibe. And Dean Cundey, his cinematography for the film is fantastic. I mean,
Oh,
the nighttime
absolutely.
shots, the shadows and just the way it's shot. I mean, normal things like two guys in suits in a car looks genuinely unsettling. It looks like it doesn't belong here. There's just something about the way he shoots the film. It's really well made, man. I mean, say what you want about the story. If you don't like the story, okay, that's fine. I get it. If you wanted Michael Myers, I can get where you wouldn't like it. But you just can't look at it and tell me it's a shit film. Like, no, it's well made. On every level, it's a well-made film. You cannot convince me otherwise.
Well, I think that kind of going back to the being a ballsy move for them to release it, it was actually kind of a smart move because, like you said, not only was it a well-made movie, but in order to go ahead and move it in a different direction without overusing Michael Myers,
yeah,
it's really smart. And then you go back. That's when you get back to Michael Myers after this, and then they start to really milk them and overuse them like they did with Freddy and Jason and everybody else.
Sure. They all do the same path.
Yeah,
and it makes you wonder, like
10th, 11th, 12th movie,
right?
And,
to quote Bo Burnham, we'll stop beating this dead horse when it stops spitting out money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's the truth. It's the truth. What really hits me, that I would love to know what other stories that John Carpenter and Deborah Hill would have come up with for their anthology films. Like the closest thing we got to it were the Tales from the Crypt movies, Demon Knight and Bordello of Blood. And I enjoyed those films. They're super fun.
And Trick or Treat was kind of the
Trick or Treat was a great anthology. Like, could we have gotten like that kind of vibe? Could we have gotten John Carpenter to basically kind of create his Creep Show? You know what I mean? Like, would we have gotten something like that? I would have loved to have seen what that kind of become.
Yeah, that would have been amazing.
I think they were still involved with trying to do something with part 4 before they gave up the rights. I forget the director who was going to direct it before they. And Carpenter was like, "Fine, just take it, do what you want. Let me just sit on my couch and collect a check."
Yeah, washing his hands of it, just done. Yeah, the other thing I forgot to mention in looking at the making of the film is you got a director in Tommy Lee Wallace. Well, Tommy Lee Wallace, of course, helped create the iconic Michael Myers mask. He, helped. He actually is Michael Myers for a couple of shots in the first Halloween, and he of course went on to have a success with, he did the It miniseries with Tim Curry. So Tommy Lee Wallace, again, talented guy. He's got a good eye, and again, he's got a really good instinct for doing horror. Again, everything about this movie should have been a hit. It kills me that two words in the title completely sabotaged. I mean, just completely trumped.
And let's give a shout out to William Shatner for giving us a frightening Halloween mask to.
That's right. And here's the fun fact: that mask is not a Captain Kirk mask. It's actually, that mask was originally made for the movie The Devil's Reign. No one understands why they made a Shatner mask from The Devil's Reign. It was repurposed as a Captain Kirk mask.
Okay.
But yeah, that was originally made for The Devil's Reign.
This love scene, the lovemaking scene that we get between Shatner. There's some movie that he did that was like.
I don't know why they picked that one to make masks.
Are you trying to slut shame Captain Kirk right now?
Well, he should be. No.
But
don't kink shame Bill Shatner. Don't you dare. I won't have you kink shame that man.
Tommy Lee Wallace.
Tommy Lee Wallace comes up with the Michael Myers mask because they had a couple masks they were looking at, a clown mask, and then they got that Michael Myers, he called it a Captain Kirk mask, but it was originally made for The Devil's Reign, but it was repurposed for Captain Kirk. But they took that mask and the whole thing was just this flat face, like this lifeless expression. It doesn't have any smile. It doesn't have a frown. It's just blank. And that's why it worked.
So Shatner on any other day, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, I'll stop.
Shatner before the Botox. It's all the same. But when you look at what Tommy Lee Wallace brings to Halloween 3, he obviously speaks a similar language to John Carpenter. The film has a very Carpenter vibe, even without the score. Just looking at it, Getting Dean
Mhm.
Cundey involved, you know, the way that it's shot, it has a very Carpenter vibe, and I think that's what's so cool about the movie. It's only like 90 minutes. I mean, it is a
Yeah.
streamlined film, much like the original Halloween. It's a streamlined movie, but it's amazing how it still takes time to get where it's going. Like you still get to learn about who the characters are. You get to see their relationships kind of form, and you are learning more about what the hell is going on. Only, of course, for the final big reveal within the last like 20 minutes of the movie, where it's just like, holy shit, this is nuts. We're in Stonehenge territory. Like what? Like, this is crazy. Because you get that little at the beginning. It's like this piece from Stonehenge still hasn't been found, and no one knows where it is. And then suddenly it's in this like this mask company.
It's just there. They
It's
had
so
a
batshit crazy. I love it. Like I love
Yeah.
that they're using pieces of Stonehenge to put in those little microchip things in the masks and all that stuff. And
I
okay,
can't-
let's also talk, man. Okay, if you were a child seeing this film, that film is goddamn nightmare fuel.
oh,
That
totally.
sequence of the mask causing that kid's head to erupt in bugs and snakes and shit, that's terrifying. Like that's one of the most horrific things I've ever seen in a movie. It gets me
Yes.
more than blood and stuff like that. There's just something about that kid like tearing at that mask and just seeing all of that stuff. Like, and then the mask, like where it kind of slumps down, where that kid's head is like basically crushed and just nothing but this gunk. It's terrifying. Like if I would have seen that when I was 8, I'd have never worn a mask in my life. I'd have been absolutely terrified.
Yeah, it's really well done, and I love that it's like a Twilight Zone type of story
Yes.
too.
Yes, it very much has a Twilight Zone vibe. Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
And you mentioned like the impending doom. It's very cosmic horror, like
Yes.
and how it's set up. Like this is bad stuff's gonna happen. Doesn't matter what we do.
And I love that your main villain is literally out to kill kids to put balance back into the
Yep,
world,
he's
to
just upset
literally
about-
bring terror back to Halloween. Like,
Yep.
wow, that's ballsy, dude. Like your main villain is like the ultimate villain. He is not just a bad guy. He is
He's the-
legitimately killing kids. Like that
They-
is his
they
end
like
game,
dogs.
dude. The only thing he didn't do was like, you know, kick puppies. Like if they'd had him do that, it's the only thing that makes it any worse.
Yeah, but he's just so he was such a great actor, and he's
Eddie
so
Murphy
good in
is
this.
Wonderful. He's great as Conal Cochran. I mean, I always think of him. I mean, there's the two big roles everybody thinks of for me. Of course, the old man in RoboCop, and he's just wonderful.
Uh-huh.
But my favorite role from him is still Greg from The Last Starfighter. I absolutely adore him in that role. And Greg is one of my favorite characters, and he's just magic in that part. And it's so funny because I've known him as these more caring characters. To see him play, you know, this very like fake nice guy who's literally just like, you're all gonna get your comeuppance, and it's gonna happen. And you know what? You've all deserved it. You all have it coming to you. Like, man, I mean, just a smile on his face as he's watching that kid's head just turn into gunk. It's just like, wow, man, it's intense.
Wasn't he the guy he owned like the logging company or something on Twin Peaks that died? He was
Yes.
like,
I believe I think you're right on that. I'll have to think on that a second, but you might be right on that. Ed O'Hara, he popped up in all kinds of stuff. What a charming man he really seemed to be. I will throw out, because obviously your record-breaking episode of Blade Runner was with me. Here's a fun trivia fact that a lot of people don't know, and we'll go to spoilers. So Stacey Nelkin, who plays the love interest for Tom Atkins in this movie, and the end of it, it's turned into a robot. Well, fun fact, in 1982, she auditioned for the part of Chris in Blade Runner. And she didn't get that part, but they cast her as the 6th replicant, whose name was to be Mary. So in the original of the film, they talk about how there were 6 replicants that escaped, and one got fried trying to get into the company. Well, you see 4 of them in the film. You never see the 5th. Stacey Nelkin was actually cast to be Mary, who would be the 5th replicant, and we would see her die on a bed surrounded by the other replicants. So she was actually supposed to be a replicant, a robot in 1982. That whole thing got cast aside, but then she eventually got to be a robot in 1983 with Halloween 3, which was like actually her first film, you know, that she ever did. her first film technically was supposed to be Blade Runner. So just an interesting kind of thing how 2 different films, 2 different directors, but she was going to be a robot in either one. So,
Wow. All roads lead to being a robot.
all roads lead to Replicants. So, and you can find her test footage of where she tested for Chris, and she did really well. And she came really close. Obviously, she made it to test screening mode. But yeah, she got cast as Mary. Mary got cut out in the long run, unfortunately, because it left that hole open until they went through and re-recorded the line for the final cut. It left that hole open of who the final replicant was. But yeah, so Stacey Nelkin gets this role. And I think she does a really good job in this movie. She has to hold her own against Tom Atkins, who's pretty seasoned by this point. And both of them work really well together. I mean, she's such a gorgeous woman. Goodness, she's just beautiful, strikingly beautiful. And she plays she downplays things so well. Like, she's never the, like, falling over on her heels and screaming at the top of her lungs, damsel in distress. She's resourceful. She's smart. She's trying to help get into this building, find out what's going on. And obviously she gets kidnapped, but she's constantly like trying to find out what's going on. She's not just along for the ride. She's not just there to be there and be pretty to look at. I really appreciate that she has stuff to do in this movie, and then of course you get the big twist with what happens to her at the end. But I think she does a great job with Tom Atkins, and Tom Atkins, of course, just to me, sells everything he's in. I mean, I will always think his greatest role is still as the detective in Night of the Creeps. I absolutely love that movie. I absolutely love him in it, but he is really great in this movie. I don't think he gets enough credit, honestly, to what he has to do with this movie. And that final sequence where he's screaming at them to turn everything off. I mean, it is gut-wrenching because he's got 2 kids at home. Like, he's literally trying to save his own children, let alone the rest of the kids on the planet. So he sells that moment so well. He sells that horror so well. I think Tom Atkins is one of those guys. Anything he's in is just better because he's in it. He's just one of those actors, man. He's a workhorse and he gets it done.
And he's a legend to the genre. I mean, he's been in so many things that are iconic or at least cult status. But yeah, that final moment is amazing, and that rivals anything in some of the best horror movies. That final performance, though. I do feel bad for the guy that runs the gas station because, like her dad, that's how the movie sets up. And he's like, man, what's up with these crazy people coming into my gas station?
Yeah, dude, this gas station is like the place to be, man. It's just like the place where all shit goes down. It's like it's the nexus point of all the crazy in this movie. It's that gas station. It's everybody gets the assignment in this movie. I think that the robot guys are really creepy. For being mechanical men or whatever, like, they're genuinely creepy. And when they kill people, it's done with such lifeless, like, just precision. It's just crushing or stabbing or drilling. It's so eerie because they're very much like Michael Myers in that, but they're just a blank slate. And a fun fact, one of them, one of the ones that gets killed in the latter half of the film is Dick Warlock, who was Michael Myers in Halloween 2. So you get a little cross-pollination there as well. So it's to me, Halloween 3 has everything Halloween in its DNA. Like, it really does. Not just the holiday, but the franchise of the films. And I think it has the spirit of Carpenter's Halloween and Halloween 2. It just, again, it has nothing to do with those things. And yet it still feels like it belongs with that world. I can't explain it other than just, like, to me, like, from Halloween 4 on, there's a real drop in quality. Although I think 4 is a solid film. And the ending is really great. The ending of 4 is really, like, outstanding. And it's so sad that 5 and 6 never capitalize on what that ending sets up and are just awful films. God damn, they're awful films. They really are. I can't watch them.
They're terrible because, 4 has a great ending. And I also love the opening. Of like it gets you right into the mood for Halloween, and it's fall. You're in the Midwest. It's beautifully
set, man. I mean, it is. And so for me, like, Halloween 3 feels like the end of John Carpenter's real involvement in the franchise, which, I mean, it technically is. But like I said, it just still feels to me wholly like a John Carpenter film. Like, it just really does to me. It almost feels like a film he ghost directed, like Spielberg with Tobe Hooper and Poltergeist. That's what this almost feels like to me.
I would agree with you, and hats off for them for setting a movie in California, and it feels exactly like it's fall, it's
Yes.
Halloween, it's
I
got
I adore the shots of all the kids around the country when you see all the kids
that's
getting the
so
masks and
great.
stuff. Like it's so beautifully shot, especially the shot in Arizona, which was like on the poster. It's such a beautifully shot sequence. It makes you think about everything as a kid that you loved about Halloween. It's all right there. It really the atmosphere of that film. I can't say enough good things about it. Is Halloween 3 a perfect film? No. I mean, the storyline is a little clunky. It's a little weird. It's definitely batshit out there. And
But
I
that's
like
what
the
I
fact,
love about it,
yeah, I like the
is that
fact that
it's
it is.
batshit
It's not
crazy.
trying to be Halloween 1 and 2 at all, but yet still feels like those two films. It's really something. I hadn't watched it in a while, and so I watched it last week to get ready for this discussion, and I just really had forgotten how like John Carpenter the film is in its DNA. Like it just really, if you didn't tell me that John Carpenter didn't direct that film, I would just assume he directed that film.
Yeah, it does look like a Carpenter film, and you talked about Tommy Lee Wallace. They go back to high school or college in
Yes.
Kentucky. They were in a band together.
Yes, the
And
Coopervilles,
yeah,
So
and Tommy Lee Wallace, I think, also was the guy like collecting leaves and throwing them around while they were making the original Halloween, trying to make Southern California look like
yep.
Illinois in October.
He Tommy Lee Wallace is all over the first Halloween. He really is. He is a critical piece of that movie. And like I said, that's why I'm so glad he got the chance to direct, Halloween 3. And I believe he was still involved with part 2, but 3 definitely he's really in there. And I really like the fact that he's just, really like you can tell he's like a protege of John Carpenter. He really worships at Carpenter's, feet and really gets what Carpenter brings to a film, using the full screen to frame your shots, using every inch of the screen to set the mood. Getting Dean Cundey was a smart move. I wish more people still use Dean Cundey. He just did an episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian, and it's one of the best looking episodes of the season. And it's the episode where they have that big chase on that train in the desert. That episode was shot by Dean Cundey, and it looks fantabulous. Like he should be shooting more
great
stuff.
He is
should
still
definitely shoot more.
working. He's just not working with like big name directors anymore.
No,
Like
and
he shot
he
some
told me-
Reese Witherspoon romantic comedy.
Right. He had told me he was thinking about, when I met him at Horror Hound back in 2009, he told me he was actually like trying to get, the backing to be able to direct something himself. He's like, I think by now I've kind of figured out how to direct a movie. And I was like,
Right.
dude, I'd love to see what you would do with directing a movie. Hell.
I mean, he's shot pretty much the most iconic films of the 80s.
I tell people he basically lensed your childhood. When people are like, who's Dean Cundey? I'm like, he lensed your childhood. Plain and simple.
Maybe he felt like he peaked and he was like, it's better just to kind of do my.
Well, like I said, in 2009, he was talking about trying to direct something. It's just one of those things of, was he able to find a project that would, that he could get the support for it, that he could get the funding for it? And I hate to say it, that's probably where, if he was looking at anything, it would have been funding. How does he get that? Because studios nowadays won't take a chance on anything that's not some pre-established IP that's guaranteed in the algorithm to make $30 to $40 to $50 million its opening weekend, which is bullshit, but it's where we are. Dean Cundey could still direct the shit out of anything. He should be directing horror films, period.
Right.
Like the fact that they didn't bring him back for the new Halloween films, what the hell were they thinking there, man? Because I don't mind them, but they don't look as good as the original film shot by Dean Cundey. They don't. They just really don't.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to top him as far as cinematographers. Probably Roger Deakins is probably one of the only few, I would say.
Jordan Cronenweth, his work on Blade Runner is, I mean, God, it's iconic. But yeah, there are certain, for me though, when I met Dean Cundey, I met him at the same time I met John Carpenter. They both signed my Big Trouble in China poster. And cool. As cool as it was to meet Carpenter, I was more geeked about meeting Dean Cundey. I won't lie, because Carpenter had this long ass line, and you had to wait forever, and all you could basically do was say hello, hand him your thing, he signs it, you move on. Like you really don't get a chance to interact. Dean Cundey was over by like Eddie Munster, like in the side area where like hardly anybody, like the big names are nowhere near that. And I'm like, Why didn't they put Cundy in the same room with Carpenter since he shot practically all of his films? And B, like the cool thing about it, I could go and just talk to Dean Cundy, and I got to like strike up a conversation with him for a good half hour. And he's the coolest guy. When I told him, I'm like, dude, you're the most important person I will meet here this weekend. And he just looked at me and he was like, me? I'm like, you shot my childhood, sir. Like it's all there is to it, you know. And when you look at the fact he's worked with Carpenter, you know, with Steven Spielberg, with Robert Zemeckis. I mean, dude, he did the Back to the Future trilogy. He did Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He did Jurassic Park. Yep. You know, come on, man. Dude's a legend. And you know what? Halloween 3, another great looking film in his repertoire, man. It's a cool looking movie. It just is. Right. What I've always liked about his work is he's not a flashy cinematographer. He doesn't bring attention to himself, but he knows how to set the scene, how to get that. He always has that wonderful, like that kind of flare around his lights in the distance, not the lens flare that J.J. Abrams does, but that flare around the lights where you just kind of see, it's like a haze. And it always adds such atmosphere to any shot. And he just nails it with Halloween 3. Halloween 3, the nighttime shots of that movie are, I mean, they're stunning. They really are. The use of shadow and light, he gets it, man. Dude just gets it.
Yeah, I mean, The Fog is an incredibly looking.
Oh my God, can we talk about that film for a sec? Like that movie does not get enough attention. It is one of the greatest ghost stories ever put to film.
It's because it's right between Halloween and Escape from New York. That's part of the reason.
Oh, I adore The Fog.
It's
like,
so good.
That movie, the soundtrack, the atmosphere, it's a perfect
Adrian
film
Barbeau.
to watch. Yeah, dude, it's a perfect film to watch during spooky season. That's all I'm saying. It is as good as it gets. As good as it gets.
I think, you talk about the plot. I think you're right. It is a bit clunky, but I love it how crazy it gets. But I was watching it last week and my wife was figuring things out. She's like, okay, those guys are obviously robots or aliens. I was like, oh, you think so? And like she was kind of figuring out where the story was going before.
I mean, if you've seen a movie, you know where the film's going practically.
Yeah, so I was like, okay,
it's going straight to town.
Yep.
But I thought it was interesting, and maybe they didn't do it intentionally, but it looks like for those scenes where Tom Atkins visits his kids that they tried to make Nancy Loomis look older, who played Annie in Halloween.
Annie, yeah.
And she's in The Fog and Assault on Precinct 13. And I'm wondering if they tried to make her look older because she was playing Tom Atkins' ex-wife. Because
possible.
I'm like, oh, they're trying to make her look older because
she was only in her 30s when she made that. So
right, and I'm like
mid 20s when she makes Halloween, mid to late 20s for Halloween. So
and what is he in his late 40s? He's pushing 50. I mean,
he's I think early to mid 40s. I think in that movie when he made it, I think he was like early to mid 40s at that point.
Yeah.
So he probably had a good decade on her easy. So they had.
That's what I was thinking because that's the one thing with of course, I know it's the plot of the movie, and of course, in the 80s, you had to have like the guy and the girl hook up. But I'm like, is he younger than her dad or older than her dad? Or
all that matters is Tom Atkins is your dad. Period. That's all there is to it. Tom Atkins is your dad. You know, I mean, he got to score with Jamie Lee Curtis in The Fog, Stacey Nelkin in Halloween 3. Come on, dude. Tom Atkins is your dad. That guy's probably got tons of kids all over the country we don't even know about. That mustache made women's pregnant. Let's just be honest.
Jamie Lee Curtis is in this movie. She's the voice.
Yes, she is. She's the voice. Yes, the voice of the town. It's now 6 p.m. Yeah, just like she did for John Carpenter for Escape from New York at the beginning. It's the same thing.
Because in '82, she's still a Scream Queen. I think Trading Places is the next year, right? That's '83.
Yes, Trading Places would be right after that. Actually, it was in '83, same year, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah, right around that time is when she would make the flip to more comedy, and then you get like A Fish Called Wanda and all that great stuff.
Well, I listened to her being interviewed by Mick Garris, and I forget how she ended up getting Trading Places, but she said the reason she got A Fish Called Wanda is because John Cleese saw Trading Places and was like, oh, yeah, I think I'll cast her in this role.
And dude, she holds her own beautifully in that film with 3 of the funniest men on the planet. I mean, she holds her own perfectly. So yeah, to me, you know, when you look at what Halloween brought upon the planet, like what that film did, that the franchises it inspired, the careers that it launched, you can't deny that Halloween had a tremendous impact and not just horror, but just in cinema.
Just in film, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was the highest grossing independent film till Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is weird. That's considered an independent movie, but apparently it is.
Weird.
The fact that Halloween made that much money, I mean, it's insane. For a $300,000 budget, that film has it just kept, it was like a license to print money. And I think for me, that's why I look at Halloween 3 is I feel like at that point, Carpenter had earned the chance to do something different, to do something a little off the grid. He had earned it at that point because, man, his output of films up till that point was just nonstop awesome. Regardless of box office, the dude was putting out films that were just truly, and it's funny, it feels like all of his movies are 20 years ahead of their time.
Especially They Live.
And especially The Thing. The Thing, nobody really, everybody's, it's too gory, it's just gross, it's just blah. And now everybody looks at it as the goddamn thriller, perfection, piece of thriller science fiction horror that it is, man. I mean, it's a perfect movie. It's Carpenter's masterpiece. And it's just like with Halloween 3, everybody dumped on it back then, but now people are able to look back at it with fresher eyes and with time and perspective. And they're like, damn, you know what? This was kind of cool. What else can you compare it to at that time? Because in the early 80s where that came out at, everything at that point was just the slasher dude wearing a mask, killing teenagers. That's all that they were at that point. There was nothing that outside the box, but this film is. And that's why I think, again, much like with John Carpenter's The Thing, people were they weren't prepared for that. They weren't prepared for the dread and the gore and the horror. They weren't prepared for it. They just wanted slasher movie and just more like Michael Myers type stuff. They didn't want this thought about can you trust the person beside of you, and this little pot boiler of just the not knowing of if the person next to you is an alien or not. Just, you don't trust anybody. Everybody's just at each other's throats. They weren't ready for that. And I feel like the same thing here. The horror audiences were expecting something. They were expecting the norm at that point, and instead they got something that didn't treat them like idiots, tried something a little different, and kind of swung for the fences with just out there crazy cosmic cool. And I'm glad that it's finally being looked at for the cool Halloween movie that it is.
For sure. And Carpenter never wanted to make that kind of movie. As much as Halloween created or invented the tropes of what a slasher film is, he just wanted to make a spooky atmospheric film. And then people were like, well, this movie's hugely successful. Let's do more of that, but let's up the gore and the nudity.
Well, the difference is John Carpenter put real thought and skill into telling that story. It was about atmosphere. There's literally one shot of blood in that movie, and it's when he kills his sister at the very beginning of the film. That's it. There's no other blood in the film. It's insane when you think you see more than what's there, but you don't. And so the problem is while I enjoy Friday the 13th, 2, 3, and 4, I really don't like the first Friday the 13th. Let me just hot take. I think it's a bad film. But 2, 3, and 4, the little trilogy that they are, I enjoy them for what they are. But they're not well-made films.
No.
Not well-made at all. The soundtracks are pretty cool, but the direction and everything, no. They're nowhere near what John Carpenter did Halloween. So that's why everything was well, if I don't have the ability to make a good-looking film, I can at least put the two biggest special effects that I need for horror, tits and blood, and I'll make a movie. And if you have those two, you can get the budget and you can go. And I think it's hilarious that Paramount was genuinely ashamed of the Friday the 13th franchise. I think it's hilarious that they
did 8 of them before they gave up the rights.
We'll release it, but we'll hold our nose when we do and just wait for that money to come in and make us feel better about it. But they hated the fact that critics just absolutely destroyed those films, that they were, really and truly, they were nowhere near when you look at the iconic horror films, look at The Exorcist, brilliantly made film, brilliant in every way. William Friedkin, directed something that almost feels like a goddamn documentary. It's a stunning achievement in horror. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, brilliant film in every way. It is one of the most atmospheric and haunting films. It is, to me, the scariest movie I've still to this day ever watched. And you look at Halloween. Halloween has the atmosphere. It's all killer, no filler. It's a 90-minute streamlined ride, man. And it knows exactly what it's doing. It knows when to ramp up the tension and when to release it. I love the fact that that movie goes on for about 45 to 50 minutes before the first kill after the sister at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That all this time
it's
of
just
building
set up and Donald
and all the time,
Pleasance
things are gonna
overacting
happen.
the shit, but doing it so well.
And then when it happens, boy, the dominoes start falling at that point and the countdown's on. And that is genuinely great filmmaking. Whereas with any other slasher film, it's just how quickly can we get the dude to stab someone, and how quickly can we get, this head get cut off, and how quickly can we have the girl with the big boobs to get her shirt off and then go get stabbed when she goes skinny dipping. Like it's just all, I mean, it's crap. It's fast food. Let's put it that way. It's fast food. Friday the 13th franchise, they're fast food.
Yeah.
Halloween is like Qdoba. You know what I mean? Like it's not steak and baked potato, but it's a damn fine meal that you can get it to go, or you can sit there and enjoy it. But it's great. It knows exactly what it is, and it gives you everything you want, and it does it in a very beautiful presentation and gets it all right. Now, The Exorcist and The Shining, that's your steak and baked potato meal.
Yes.
There, So,
but I mean, that's
food.
a budget. That's Hollywood, like, going all out and trying to be like, we're going to make a classy, well-made horror film.
I mean, keep in mind that The Exorcist was nominated for Best Picture.
Yes, it was.
Like, that, I mean, that's a big deal. And no other horror film had been nominated for that or won any hardware for it until The Silence of the Lambs, and it took the big five.
I agree with everything you said about Season of the Witch. I think it's a shame that the franchise didn't go in that direction. I understand.
Me too.
And I do enjoy some of the sequels in the franchise, but I would put this right under the original as far if I was ranking the franchise, the films, this would be probably number 2 for me. And I hope
like Halloween 2 an awful lot. For me, it would literally be in the order they came, 1, 2, 3, but 2 and 3 are really, really close, man. I really like Halloween 2. Goodness, I really do. Like there's a lot to love about that movie. There really is. I like that it picks up right after the end of the first film, that it goes right into what happened. Donald Pleasance is top tier as always.
Got a young Dana Carvey show up.
You got Lance Guest before he was the last Starfighter. He's there working. You got Amazing Grace.
I have to agree, Kevin, because as much as I love Michael Myers, I think having 2 films was probably enough.
Yeah.
When they ended on such, it's a great ending. Like Dr. Loomis sets them on fire and blows the hospital up.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
The third one was great. I absolutely love it. I'm with you. I think if it was just titled Season of the Witch,
it would have been at least would have been appreciated better. I don't know if it would have been a hit, but it would have been appreciated better at its time.
Right, or just Halloween.
Season of the Witch, or Halloween presents Season of the Witch. Yeah.
Season of the Witch, a Halloween anthology. There you go.
Let's
make it the longest title we could ever make.
And I hope that with this newest film supposedly being Halloween Ends, which it won't be, but
not if it makes money.
I hope that they actually go in this direction, whether Carpenter does the music or it's just Blumhouse producing more movies for it. I just hope it goes in that direction, because there's not much more you can do with Michael Myers, honestly.
Dude's in his 70s at this point, man. Let it go. Let it go. Let's go with something else.
But before we move on to Dream Warriors, is there anything else we want to say about this movie that's finally become like a Halloween classic? It's considered now like a seasonal movie to watch every year. Does Lindsay have any thoughts on Season of the Witch?
I was really pleasantly surprised, because I know before I actually watched it, I'd heard people say that it was the worst. and it was just people who seemed to be confused about the concept of a Halloween movie without Michael Myers in it. I thought it was really good. Like it is if you're a kid specifically, the scariest thing you can think about happening on Halloween is what happens in season of the witch.
Amen.
Bonkers, like not based in any kind of reality or anything like that. Just like terrifying concept.
Yeah,
Amen.
if you break this plot down, it makes no sense, right? Like it's just like what? But you just got to enjoy the ride, and it's fun, and it is far more interesting than any of the other Halloween sequels that follow. Even some of the ones I enjoy, it's far more.
I would agree completely, because at least with this, it's something different, it's something new, it's something fresh. Whether you completely agree with every plot point or not, it's at least just not another dude in a mask hacking up teenagers during a pick your holiday. It's something that, at least to me, it's original, and I will always support something that just tries something new, even if the film fails. If it at least tried something, it's why I will always defend Richard Kelly's Southland Tales. Southland Tales is the most fascinating failure of a movie I've ever watched, but goddamn, it tried to go somewhere and do something different, and I applaud it for trying it. And I feel the same way about Halloween 3. It's this weird batshit crazy movie, but goddamn, they tried something different. And to me, if you don't hold the specter of Michael Myers over your viewing of it and just watch it as its own thing, I think you'll be surprised at how much fun it is, especially to watch during the month of October.
For sure. And yeah, it's kind of dated for like its time period, but so is so many other older movies you enjoy.
All right,
so
come on, man.
like there's definitely worse things you could watch from 1982. But Dream Warriors, by many people's standard, is at least considered the best of the sequels in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
It's the best of the franchise. Fight me, bro.
It's the most comic booky
Perfect.
MV-ish Freddy that I can think of. Like it's where he kind of it's where they go off the rails into campiness.
But it's a nice line in this one. Like it's a nice good mixture, and I think they got Wes Craven to come back and work on the screenplay, and then you get Frank Darabont writing on the screenplay too, who is basically one of the greatest living screenwriters.
Yep.
Probably next to Lawrence Kasdan, those two guys.
I was actually thinking earlier today, I was taking my dog for a walk, and I was like, what would I say about Nightmare on Elm Street 3? Okay. First of all, it's my favorite of the series. I love, they basically go for me 3, 1, A New Nightmare, 4, 2, 5, 6. That's the order for me.
That's fair.
For me,
I don't know if I completely would have the same ranking, but like that, the top 3 are the same.
Yeah, dude. There's no debate. You can flip 1 and 3 if you want. That's fine. But that top 3 is the top 3. There's just no other way to look at it. Sorry, there's just not.
And I think New Nightmare is really good. And if you go back and watch it, just kind of think like, wow, he was being meta before Scream. Like
yes,
this is totally like a pre-Scream.
So the thing about why I love A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, it's, to me, the pinnacle of everything that I would want in a Nightmare on Elm Street film in one movie. Freddy is still scary. There's still a menace to him. But we're starting to see where he kind of gets those little one-liners in there. And it's not chock full of them. He has not become the full-blown MTV cartoon that he becomes from 4 on. He's not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
There's still that level of menace. You get some of the most creative visuals. You get the most creative visuals, I think, of any of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. You get some of the best deaths that have ever been done in a horror film, especially for the franchise, but just horror films in general. You get, because you bring in Frank Darabont, you get a screenplay that's actually world building. This is where we learn that Freddy Krueger is the bastard son of 100 maniacs. This is where we got that background. This is where we learn more about him. This is the film that shows us more of how this murder of Freddy Krueger has affected the town of Springwood. Do you notice that like basically every parent in this movie drinks?
Yeah.
That's not
They're all
said.
alcoholics because
said,
they're living with the guilt of
shown.
murdering someone.
It's not ever said, but it's completely shown. It's storytelling without literally saying it. They're not spoon feeding it, but it's there. You get the return of Nancy. You get the return of her dad. You get the new setup with Kristen. You get a whole new series of characters. You get characters who actually are able to do in dreams the things that we do in dreams, that you can fight back. You have the ability to do the things that you dream about. It was Inception before there was Inception. Let's be honest. It really is. So to me, like everything I could ever want in a Nightmare on Elm Street film is in a Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. It's got the best visuals. I mean, still go back and look. Those visuals hold up. That giant Freddy snake, fucking impressive as hell. That thing is stunning. Look at the stop motion animation. I mean, you get some Harryhausen type vibes in this movie.
Yeah.
You get the stop motion puppet that the kid creates. You get the horrific deaths that come. You have Dick Cavett and Zsa Zsa Gabor. No other Nightmare on Elm Street film has that, so shut up. No other.
I always love the Dick Cavett.
That bit is great. I mean, you know, that's the kill that kind of makes where Freddy goes in the future and drags talking about beating a dead horse. But that first time, you're like, oh man, that's a great kill, great line, and then
it's awesome.
It just gets overused from that point.
We haven't gotten to the crazy MTV era. And you also get a kick-ass song by Dokken with Dream Warriors.
Oh, you got two Dokken songs in this movie.
Two Dokken, but the video for Dream Warriors, where you actually got Robert Englund to be Freddy in a music video. It's fantastic. Like, this is the movie that really, really, to me, solidified Freddy Krueger as like an icon.
Oh, for sure. This is the blockbuster one.
Yeah, this is the one that, to me, like, again, anything you could think of that should be in a Freddy movie is in this film. It's the world building that really gets me, because spoilers already, we know this, but you know, we bring back the original survivor of the first film, and we lose her in this film. Mm-hmm. We lose Nancy. We absolutely do. And we set up Kristen, who will become the main character in Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5. Like, it sets up all that. Now, granted, Darabont hadn't written that stuff, but the idea was this was a passing of the torch from Heather Langenkamp to Patricia Arquette. It's from character to character. They bring back John Saxon, so they're kind of tying up the loose ends. Saxon, you know, gets to kind of redeem himself and help bring an end to Krueger. You bring back Freddy, but you've amped up his powers. You've amped up the dream world that he lives in. You know, you've given, it's not just in the boiler room anymore like it was in the first movie. And it's not just in a kid's bedroom like in the second. It's just kind of all over now. You get the house, you get so many cool set pieces. You've got just, you know, the stuff in the hospital ward. You've got so much going on. You've got so many new characters. All the characters are interesting. Like, I don't hate any of the characters. You got even your background. You got Lawrence Fishburne as like one of the
leaders. As the cool orderly.
Like, that's awesome. All the kids are interesting. They're all fun. You don't want them to die. And that is, to me, why the first Halloween works, why, you know, like Alien works, why so many of the great horror films that before the slasher genre took over in the 80s, why those films worked was because it wasn't about seeing everybody die. It wasn't just, oh, who's going to get it next? It was, God, don't let these people die. Please let them get away from this guy. And in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, you don't want these kids to die. They're all innocent. They have nothing to do with what their parents did. They're just poor, frightened teens who are literally being like set up to slaughter by doctors who don't understand them, who won't listen to them. And you also get like the great the character, the doctor that Nancy kind of becomes like, you know, the love interest, Neil. What a cool character he is. The fact that he's willing to, like, you know, listen to her and get the Hypnosil for the kids to try, and he's just trying to save them. And at the end, like, it gets me every time, dude, when he's there over the skeleton of Freddy, and he pops open that holy water, and he just literally says, "Please, God, for the kids and for Nancy." Like, he might actually die, and the last thing he says is, "Please, help me save these children. Help me save Nancy." That gets me every time. And Kristen holding Nancy, telling her she's going to dream her into a beautiful dream. that gets me every time because I care about these characters. It's one of the few slasher films where I can genuinely say that I want these characters to survive, and it hurts when we lose them.
Yeah, I think that's the strength of this movie. I think that's why it stands out as the best sequel in many people's eyes. And let's be honest, I know that part 2 has become somewhat of a cult favorite now, especially
It's
in
the Halloween 3 of the Elm Street series.
Right.
especially in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was kind of rushed because the first movie was a surprise success.
Yep.
And at the time, I don't believe part 2 was received very well from.
Not critically, but it made bank, which is why.
Yeah, it made money, which is how they were able to make 3. But I think it was very smart. And I can't remember if Craven wrote it initially.
He wrote a draft that was not used. He had an idea for the third film, so he wrote a draft. That draft was not used, but then they kind of got him, Chuck Russell, and Frank Darabont all kind of worked on something that the studio felt was more filmable, was more in line with where they wanted it to go. But what's funny is I've read reports that apparently the studio really didn't have faith in the film as they were seeing the dailies. But then when they finally saw the final cut and saw what Chuck Russell was doing, they were like, oh shit, this is good. We need to get this out. We need to get this out now. So they really got behind it.
I think Darabont, and I don't know if it's Darabont and Russell together or it's more Darabont. I think they share screenwriting.
They do
with the script, but yeah, they build the lore. They continue. They do what good sequels do. They reintroduce the dynamics and what we know from the original and build on it.
Yes.
And they make the dream world all the more interesting because we didn't see much in the other 2 films other than you're just in someone's nightmare. But they're learning their powers. Kristen's able to bring other people into her dreams and people are able to create these personas of themselves. Yeah, it's very much Inception before Inception. And
it really is.
They're all great characters, like you said, and that's what makes it stand out from not just other slasher films, but other nightmare films, because you actually care about these people.
Right.
And I don't know what happened with part 4, if they were going to kill Kristen off or Patricia Arquette just didn't want to come back, so they killed the character off. But I think that's one of the biggest things that hurts part 4. Yeah. Is them killing those 3 characters off immediately, the survivors.
I was going to ask if that. It always felt kind of cheap to me that they did that, and I hated that because that was, again, this movie is. You do feel for these characters, and you want to see them make it and actually beat this thing. And here we go into the fourth movie, and they get killed off right away. And
whereas to me, I think if Patricia Arquette comes back, I think it'd have been interesting for Kristen to become the Dream Master, where she discovers that not only can she pull people in, but now she's figuring out there are other layers to her ability, and that's where she starts taking on the abilities and powers of the people that she knows. Right. I do like part 4. I mean, other than the killing off of those 3 characters, I like the idea behind part 4 a lot. I like what Alice goes through, and I like the fact that she's able to, sort of like Mega Man, she takes on the powers of all the people who've been defeated and goes after Freddy, with those powers. I think that's actually really cool. But if it would have been Kristen, if it would have been Patricia Arquette, it would have been so much more rewarding that if Kristen's in it and she loses Kincaid and she loses Joey, that's real loss. And that's loss for us too, because we'll feel that more because Kristen has to pick up the pieces and go through this journey. But now Kristen has Kincaid's strength, Joey's voice, and then the other people that she's met. That would be so much more satisfying of part 4. Part 4 is still very fun. I mean, Rennie Harlan directed a fun movie. It's great for what it is. It's not Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or Nightmare on Elm Street 1, but like I said, I would probably put it in the number 4 spot after a New Nightmare. I think it's still pretty fun. And again, I like the idea of the Dream Master. I just wish it was Kristen because it feels like everything in 3 is setting her up to have been that for the franchise. to be the new Nancy, basically.
Right.
So, no disrespect to the leading actor in this movie, because I do like his character, and part of the reason he listens to Nancy is because he's thirsty. But
Sure.
another
But I
the
don't
one
take it as much. I mean, that's there, but I really like the fact that he's not
He
just
actually
like a
cares.
horn dog. He
Yeah.
like, I love that after he meets her for the first time and he sees her prescription, the next scene he's in is sitting at the computer looking up what the hell Hypnocil is.
Yep.
I mean, like it's not him trying to figure out where does she live, how do I find her phone number. It's like, no, what the shit is she taking? That's weird. What is this? And I like the fact that he goes along with her. I
Yeah.
like the fact that he stands up to her dad. That he
Yes.
like, basically says, "Drunk John Saxon, you're going to help me get shit done."
And
I love
to the doctor that I guess is maybe not his superior, but at least like
yeah.
like he's like, no,
Because
I'm
she's
gonna do
almost like
this.
a bad guy in the film, but you can't be mad at her because she's only doing what she knows by science.
Right.
Like that's the whole thing, and that's where I love the whole thing of the nun. Who of course you find out is Amanda Kruger, but the whole thing is where she's like, if science is your only faith, then you're going to lose. Like you're going to have to really get, and of course that's what he has to do. He has to believe in faith. He has to, basically say, the final rites to take out Freddy Krueger. And I love that. Like I love that the man of science has to adapt to faith. He starts with listening to Nancy. Like he starts by saying, okay, I'm going to go with you on this. We're going to hypnotize these kids. I'm going to see if this is real. He actually goes with her on that. And then he takes it the next step forward by actually going to the church, getting the holy water, getting the crucifix, even leaving the reverend his ID card. So,
That's a great bit. He's like, I'm
it's
gonna leave my
wonderful.
driver's license.
He's a really great character. Like the thirsty is there, but I really like the fact that he's not like a horn dog.
That's not his driving force.
It's
His
not his
driving
overall
force
drive.
is to protect and help these kids because he's the doctor that actually
And that's
cares.
what I love when they fire him. Like the last thing he says to his like other superior is just, please listen to them. Please help these kids. Like that's real, man. Like that's real. That guy's a genuine hero. And I love every character in this movie. There's no bad character. I mean, you can say what you want about performances, whatever, but there's no bad character. I really enjoy them all.
I wasn't gonna fault him for that part of the movie, and I know he was in Body Double as well, so I know he's a completely different actor. But the first time I saw this movie as a kid, I'm like, this guy looks like Bill Maher. What's Bill Maher doing in this movie?
That's fair. I mean, he does kind of resemble it, but I really do like his character. I like that he's kind of like, the man of science who has to become a man of faith. And I always find those kinds of story arcs interesting. And I think, again, Neil's character goes through a lot. And I love that, he goes through the ringer, man. I mean, he loses Nancy, but he does help save those remaining kids. And, again, there's just so much to this movie. There's so many layers to this movie that are just, I mean, you got a great score by Angela Badalamenti, who, of course, most people know for Twin Peaks. He does a great job with the score. It's a very atmospheric, very moody score. It has moments of like hope and creativity when they first go into the dream world with themselves, to just moments of sheer dread and terror. He just really captures it all. Even the haunting, like the melody that plays when Neil sees the nun. There's just something so eerie about it. Like, and she's not like a force of malice or anything. She's not like an evil spirit, but there's just something that's just, she's given reverence, really, with the way that she's shot and the way that the soundtrack treats her. Again, there's so many levels to this movie. Kevin Yeager's makeup work for Freddy is the best. I think he looks the best ever. Hoyt Eatman and Dream Quest and all the special effects work that they do for this movie on a very limited budget. They got all the budget that they had, basically. And it's there. It holds up. Some of the things are a little dodgy, sure, but the actual practical effects, spot on.
Top notch. It's top notch work. I love the stop motion in this.
Oh, love it.
Yeah. Usually, I worked at a state facility for 10 years, and usually when I watch movies, I'm like, that's not how it is. And there's a lot of that in here, but there's one scene that is very realistic. It is the scene right before that one girl gets killed by the TV, where Lawrence Fishburne is like, well, you need to go to your room. And she's like, I can't sleep. I don't want to sleep. Can I stay up and watch TV? And he's like, fine. but I didn't see you in here.
Yeah,
That's
I didn't
very
see you in here.
accurate. That is accurate. You will do that to keep a client chill and calm, especially if you're working
Sure.
in the night shift. You'll be like, yeah, you're not supposed to be watching TV right now, but you know what? We're short
We'll
staffed,
let it
and
slide. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr.
you
Weller.
stay quiet and cool. We'll let you watch the TV right
But
now.
and again, even in that little moment, though, we see that he cares for those kids. You know, when Nancy
Oh, for
comes back
sure.
because Kristen gets put in the room, he's like, "Look, man, I don't want you. I've lost 3 of my kids this week. I can't let you back here to talk to her." You know, like he takes ownership in that too. Like, I really I love the fact that everybody is really supporting everybody in this wing. Like everybody's there together. And yeah, okay, Kincaid's going to act up, so he's going to have to go in the quiet room. Like that's going to happen because again, you can't have someone just acting out violently and not do something about it. But I just really love that everybody looks out for everybody. I love how like it's a very creative death, but you know, the kid that does the puppets, you know, when he gets turned into
Yeah, that
horrific.
might be the best
Ugh.
death, honestly.
Horrific. But
Yeah.
I
His
going back and looking at it, the way that the kids are all there looking up at him and they're all yelling at him to try to wake him up, like it's heartbreaking, man. Like you really feel it when he falls, like you see it, you feel it. Like these kids have had so much taken from them. All they have is each other. And that's what makes Freddy even more nefarious in this movie is he's not just killing kids. He's taking away their own support system, man. Like there is no one else who believes them. And he's taking them out one by one. So less and less people believe them and less people can help them. And that also ups their fear, which gives him more power in that realm. It's diabolical. I mean, like this film is smarter than people would give it credit for. It's more nuanced than people would give it credit for. And it's why it stands to me as the top of the franchise.
Well, yeah, because you know, in the first film and the second film, he's picking on what seemed to be middle class, rich white kids in the neighborhood. Right. But in this film, these
are kids from rougher
one's
sides.
A former drug addict. One is a mute because of
they're locked up. They can't go.
One's in a wheelchair because he tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're neglected kids, which makes it even worse. That makes we know Freddy was a predator, like they say, filthy child murderer. We know what that means. And he really is a predator in this movie because he's feeding off these kids who have been through a lot. They're suffering. They have traumatic.
Using the nurse that Joey has a crush on, like using that to get him and capture him, like that's horrible. Like Joey's such a sweet kid. He doesn't talk and I love that he finds his voice to save his friends. Like again, powerful moment, man. Like that moment doesn't happen in a Friday the 13th movie.
No.
It just doesn't. It doesn't happen. But it happens in this movie. And again, there are moments when I was a kid, like, I mean, I really got into this movie. I was like 12 when this came out. And I mean, like, I really got behind those kids. Like, I was glad when Taryn shows up with her knives. I'm like, yeah, man, she's going to be able to fight back. You know, you've got the Wizard Master. You've got Kincaid being able to smash metal. I'm like, finally, these kids have a chance. But what Freddy does, what he does best, he separates them. Mm-hmm. And when they don't have each other to rely on, they're weaker. And he knows that, and he preys upon it. And it's what makes him, I think he's at his most diabolical in this movie. Most people will still say the first movie. I think it's this one. Because, again, these kids are neglected. They're on suicide watch. They are in as weak and vulnerable a stage as a teenager could possibly be. They're away from their parents. They don't have that support. They don't have school. They don't have anything but each other. And so to me, this is Freddy at his most diabolical. And again, it's why I think this is the best, because this is where he's still is the most menacing, but you're starting to see that sort of that gallows humor. You know, sorry, kid, I don't believe in fairy tales. You know, like that kind of stuff. It's great. I mean, it's great, but it's like heartbreaking to see that kid die. But it's a great one-liner. Nobody can deny that. So Freddy is, to me, he's at his apex in this movie. He's at his apex. He's at the top of the.
I would agree with you that he's more diabolical and I wouldn't say terrifying. I would say more diabolical and like definitely more predatorial in this one. I think
See,
the
that's
first
more
one,
terrifying to me. Like that's more
yeah,
terrifying to me. Like that gets under my skin.
for
As a
sure. And
parent, that gets under your skin. It does.
I think maybe though presentation wise, he might be a little more frightening with the atmosphere of the first movie, just
I would give you
because,
that. I would give
yeah.
you that. That scene in the alleyway where he stretches his arms still freaks me out to this day. That is one of the most disturbing images I've ever seen in a movie. It gets under my skin. It
But
does.
this movie's also fun. I don't know if the original Nightmare is fun. This movie's fun.
I find this one easier to go back and watch for that very reason. I mean, I love the first film. It's a really great movie, but it's just a downer of a film. Like it really is.
Yeah.
It ends on a downer. It's just a downer. This one, to me, again, it's scary and it's sad and it's heartbreaking at points, but it's also fun. Like there's an action side to this. There's
It's
a horror side. There's action.
it's a
there's
roller
romance.
coaster.
Yeah, it goes all over the place, man.
Yeah.
But again, Frank Darabont, you put him on your screenplay, it's going to get better instantly.
This is kind of like the Aliens to Aliens.
Yes.
I would say
Yes,
Nightmare
it
on
is.
Elm Street is a haunted house film, and this is a roller coaster. This
Yeah,
is a roller
this is
coaster
the Aliens
ride.
of the franchise, and I think that's a great analogy for it. And again, at that point, it becomes just: do you prefer Alien over Aliens? Do you prefer Nightmare 1 over Nightmare 3? That's just the way I look at it. And I don't think you're wrong for liking 1 over 3. I get it because 1 is the first film; it's very original. You've never seen a killer like that. It's really dark and scary, and boy, there's a lot of levels to that film. But this one, to me, is the perfect balance of fun, scary, action, horror, a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of romance, a little bit of drama. It's just all there. Everything I want in a Freddy film is in this movie.
The only other thing I wanted to add, because we talked about all the different actors, the one thing I like about Lawrence Fishburne, besides that he genuinely cares, is I guess he is a character or a person they trust or like, because in that one scene where the other orderly's being creepy and she's like, I'm gonna tell whatever Lawrence Fishburne's name is, so I guess he held some kind of probably not authority because he's just an orderly, but at least to them he's like someone they can trust or someone they can rely on.
He's not a doctor, and but he's an outside voice that understands, is more on their level and more, because Cody, I was there with you on War. I was only there for a year and a half, but it felt like 10 years. I'll tell you that, Cody. I don't see how you did it for 10 years, but bless you, sir. But there were patients that felt comfortable with a certain staff, more comfortable with a certain staff than they did another one, and it all came down to the way you treated them. And they're human beings. They may have mental issues, but they're still human.
They're still human beings.
And,
right.
So Lawrence Fishburne's not that much older. Like he's not even 30 yet.
Though. He's close to them in age, so he's more relatable than the older docs by and far.
Yeah.
He probably treats them the most human and with the most respect, and like letting her stay up to watch TV.
Right.
They seem like the most strictest rule to one person, but when you allow that may mean the most to them. That might mean that they don't have to lay there in the dark and battle with whatever voices are in their head or whatever they're thinking about or what's going on. They can be distracted, and as long as they're quiet, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you show somebody that courtesy, that might be the biggest thing to them. That might make their whole week.
It's even little subtle things like when he's taking Nancy around to introduce her to the kids, and the way that he speaks so positively about them. He doesn't. He jokes about Kincaid being in the quiet room a lot, but he doesn't speak about him like, oh, watch out.
No, he's being playful. Like he's not like talking down to him or like shaming him or anything.
With the Wizard Master, when it's time for bed, he's the one that picks him up and sets him on his bed and gets his feet under the blanket and pulls the blanket up because he can't do that but he does it with like real gentle ease. And that, again, it's the kind of thing that an actor like Lawrence Fishburne pulls off. That scene really shouldn't mean anything, but yet the way he approaches it, this is not the first time he probably does this every night, and everybody is just comfortable. it's a respectful, nice moment. And again, most movies don't go this hard in just creating the world building and the storytelling. You don't have to know that he does this every night. You pick that up from the way he does it. But again, it's the gentle touch, the way that he just gently picks him up. Yeah. It's time to put your put your game up. Time for bed. But again, he lifts up the blanket and gets his legs underneath it, and then pulls it up. And it's a simple little thing, but it's a sweet moment. And I love those little moments with his character. He really, I mean, Lawrence Fishburne brings a lot to it just because he's Lawrence Fishburne, or Larry Fishburne.
Yeah.
But
it was. Yeah,
it's those layers that Chuck Russell allows to happen. And those things don't happen in most 80s slashers films. They just don't. And he absolutely lets it happen. And again, that's why the film, I feel like this movie just elevates, much like Halloween elevated the concept of a slasher film. I think this film elevates the concept of an 80s slasher film to what I think may be, honestly, the best 80s slasher film. I think this might be the best of all the ones that came out in the 80s. I think this is the one I probably watched the most.
I can't really argue with that. The only other one I would put up against it is the original because of, but this one even elevates all that, especially what made the first one so good is that you had a killer that was actually a character.
Yes.
And that is what's missing in the Michael Myers and Jason. They're not really characters. They're just brooding for unstoppable killing
ominous
machines.
shapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Freddy is a character, even
he's got
though
a personality.
Even though he's
not happy,
burning flesh pedophile. He's a character.
Yeah, he is,
and he enters your dreams where you're the most vulnerable.
Where you're the most vulnerable, exactly. That's what makes him so terrifying, and that's why I think in this movie, they just really were able to up the ante with the visuals and stuff. Like the stop motion puppet, and where he grows at the end of the guy's bed. It's a creepy visual, like it really is. It's really unsettling. And then when he uses the kid's tendons to make him a puppet, like that is genuinely that's like David Cronenberg level body horror right there, man. That scene always makes me wince. Like it gets to me every time.
Yeah, this is really just like one of those. They really did it. They did it extremely well, and for better or worse, this is where they took the franchise, and I think they tried to recapture this magic with the subsequent sequels. It just never quite hit.
Right. Well, you didn't capture it because you didn't have Frank Darabont and Wes Craven helping with the screenplay directing. Wes Craven was producer or whatever. He was making his bank off of it, but he really wasn't that involved. Not like he was with this one. This was the one that brought him back, and I think that there's a lot to be said for that. But when you get someone like Frank Darabont, and obviously he and Chuck Russell work well together because the two would work well the next year on the brilliant remake Blob. And I think the Blob goes up there with The Fly and The Thing as like a remake that surpasses the original in every way, shape, and form. I think the Blob, the remake, is a stunning achievement for what it is. It's a brilliant film. But again, you've got a director who cares about the source, cares about the characters, and a screenwriter who understands that you want to have your gore and your scares, sure, but if people don't care about these characters at all, then what's the point? It's why the first Halloween works. It's why Alien works. It's why the first Nightmare works. It's why this film works so well. We care about the characters. We want them to survive. With Friday the 13th, you're just looking to feel like, hey, how's Jason going to kill this person? How's he going to kill this person? How's he going to kill that person? Because they're all going to die. And nobody cares about them because there's no real characterization. It's just, oh, there's the slut, there's the jock, there's
who's the one that's gonna survive? Who's the one?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which if you go into the woods, you have sex, you're gonna die. That's
if you smoke weed or drink beer, you're gonna die.
Now, again, let me just say, I enjoy fast food. So I enjoy Friday the 13th, 2, 3, and 4. I really enjoy those films. I know it sounds like I'm bashing them. I'm not, but I know what they are.
Yeah, they're on a whole they're in a whole different level. Like
that's a whole different class of movie.
I enjoy them.
It's a lower class.
Yeah, like I enjoy them for cheesy, campy,
absolutely,
slasher fun movie, popcorn movies. I like to revisit Part 3 and 3D every once in a while.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And
you
I
had the
think
3D
4 is
glasses.
actually, I think 4,
Four is
2
my
and 4 are my
favorite.
favorites.
Yeah.
2 and 4 are
Yeah.
my favorites. I love 2 the most, but I put 4 right behind it.
But you know,
You get Tommy
it's like-
Jarvis, you get Crispin Glover, you know, it's good
it's
stuff.
just on a whole different level than Freddy and Michael Myers. They're all on their different levels, and they're all fun in their own
Sure.
in their own ways. So
But
I
will
don't
make
know
the
if
argument that I do think Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is the best slasher of the 80s. I genuinely, if not,
I'll
not
agree
best
with you.
horror film, but best slasher of the 80s. I'll put it at the top.
Right.
I wonder if Mike Flanagan is at least a fan of this franchise, or at least 1 and 3, because he cast Heather Langenkamp in his new series, The Midnight Club, and it's very Dream Warriors.
It is. It's very Dream Warriors like. Yes, it is. I would have to think he likes at least the third film. Like, I'd have to think that.
Well, and I've heard rumors that he might be doing something in this franchise, which if somebody could do something with it, he's the one, because for my money right now, he is probably the second best director working in horror film, right behind Jordan Peele.
I can totally agree with that statement. I absolutely can. And especially looking at an anthology horror, Mike Flanagan's your guy. Like, he really is. Like, the guy's got a real nose for it. I think Midnight Mass is the greatest Stephen King adaptation that was not based off a Stephen King book ever made. I think it's
well, he
wonderful.
made 2 adaptations to books people would have said were unfilmable.
Gerald's Game in particular.
Yeah, and he did, even though Dr. Sleep wasn't a financial hit, he did the impossible. He melded Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King together.
And Dr. Sleep is a damn good movie. Like, it is a damn good film. It's not The Shining, but it's its own thing. And to me, that's the weakest parts of that film, when he's trying to recreate The Shining. But when he's just doing his own thing, that film is outstandingly good. Like, wow. I mean, don't be wrong. It's impressive how they blend the two, but I really like it when he's just able to do his own thing. But if there was someone to bring back that sense of fear and also that sense of wonder to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, Flanagan's your guy, man. I would be all about that. I would be all about it. And if he wants to cast Henry Thomas as Freddy Krueger, go for it. I totally trust you. I would have never thought that'd be the case, but I think he could totally make it work.
If someone could do that, it would be him.
And I love how this season of Stranger Things is straight up, all over.
Vecna is basically Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I love that.
And they even got Robert Englund to show up in Stranger Things.
It's more like Dream Warriors, because you got all the kids having to fight this thing at the end. So to me, the Duffer Brothers.
That last season was a boss.
And I'll say this: if the Duffer Brothers wanted to take on a Nightmare on Elm Street film, give them all the money. Just let them go do it.
They could.
They would totally nail it. To me, I guess for me, like, that's where
one, they can write kids, and 2, they can write monsters. So I really think they're off. Yeah.
I can't wait to see what they do with the Talisman.
Oh God, no joke. The Talisman will be spectacular in their hands. Goodness gracious.
That is something they've been trying to develop for a long time, and Steven Spielberg was going to direct it, but which I think he's still producing it.
Oh wow!
I think he's still which is weird. Spielberg and Stephen King never have worked together because they're kind of similar.
Eyes of the Dragon, directed by Steven Spielberg, would have been total money. That's all I'm saying. Straight fact.
That's gonna be a powerhouse. I'm pretty anxious for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as like Nightmare on Elm Street for me, to me, 3 is the pinnacle. I still enjoy the other ones. Don't get me wrong, I still do. But 3 is the one I go back and watch at least once a year, if not sometimes even more, just because I love the film. It just puts me in a happy space. I'm just really here with it, loving it, just loving every second of it.
I think they diminish with each subsequent sequel till Craven comes and kind of does his own thing with New Nightmare, which is genuinely a frightening film, because he's like, let's make Freddy scary again.
Yeah.
The meta narrative of that film, you know, Heather Langenkamp playing Heather Langenkamp,
and using her own life experiences with that, because she had a stalker, and like
yes,
bringing more of that mythological folktale-ness that was in the original Nightmare, and like upping that.
yeah,
It really is a very well-made film, and I don't think it gets
kills me
talked
how more
enough.
people don't talk about it. Like it really kills me how it doesn't get talked about like the first three do. Like it stuns me that it's not held in higher esteem, because I think if someone told me it's their favorite of the franchise, I'd be like, you know what, I get it. I totally get it.
It is. It's very meta, and that's, you know what, I actually have not seen that one in a while, and now I want to go watch it.
Yes, you do, and you're gonna love it. I love the design of Freddy in that film. It's oh god, it's a chilling movie. Like it's genuinely creepy.
It might be the most scary of all of them, because
you could make that argument. Boy, you really could. You really could. It's a solid choice, but 3 for me is just, you know, man, it's. I wish that much care and attention went into slasher films every time they make a slasher film. Like I wish that was the mindset behind making one, and not just, you know, tits, blood, and let's make money by doing the most.
I feel like they got the wrong thing from why Halloween was so successful.
They did. They totally got the wrong thing, because Halloween doesn't rely on those things for making it great. It relies on atmosphere. It relies on a cinematographer who actually knows how to shoot a film and build tension. It relies on a soundtrack. It relies on Donald Pleasance. It relies on so many things. At the very bottom of the list is tits and blood, because there's hardly any of them in it, and they're all at the beginning. So there you go.
And I will recommend this one if people haven't seen it, because people throw this around. The only difference is what slashers took mostly comes from Halloween, but Black Christmas 4 years before, which is it's a very well made, and actually the characters are smart.
Yes.
It does not have the typical final girl. The cops actually are trying to do their job. Like, it's really well done. So
Black Christmas it's very well made. Very well made. I mean, when you're talking slashers, I mean, you know, a lot of people look at like Psycho as sort of the godfather of it. You know what I mean? Like
that and Peeping Tom.
And Peeping Tom, yeah. Those are the two that are. I mean, to me, Psycho is like, wow, what an amazing film that is. It's brilliant. But again, where Psycho works, it's about atmosphere. It's about characters. It's not about the violence. It's not about even the sex. It's atmosphere, characters. You know, just the vibe that you create. Halloween nails that, does it in spades. It's why Jaws works. Jaws gets that same concept. It gets it in spades. Good Alien gets it in spades. Like they just figure it out. They know what works. And that's where I think Nightmare 3, again, it's an 80s movie, so they were going to go big. They were going to go bigger with some of the kills and get more creative. That's fine. When you're dealing with someone who's in your dreams, you've earned that right.
Well, they've got the budget too this time. Like this, it's like I noticed watching it. Like the first movie's very grimy. It feels like an exploitation film almost.
It does.
By part 3, you got the New Line logo. Like they got the logo because Freddie made them a legit movie studio.
Yes, he did.
It's the house that Freddie built.
But even still, with as big and crazy as it gets, what's still at the absolute core of the film is characters and that atmosphere. If you don't have that, you have basically a Friday the 13th movie.
Well, I think you've passionately defended for the last 30, 45 minutes why this movie stands out as one of the best of the franchise.
I apologize if I have gone on too long again.
No, you're fine. It's fine. And I think the other thing that works great in Psycho, even though we all knew what was coming because it was already iconic, but I love that it sets up, it's a whole different movie for the first 30 or 40 minutes before that scene happens.
Pulls the rug out from under you. It's great film. And I love that they wouldn't let people in the theater after it started. If you came to the theater late, you weren't allowed in.
Well, he also removed copies of the book too, so people wouldn't be able to read the book.
Yep. I mean, Psycho, they went balls to the wall with the marketing and the presentation. Go back and watch the trailer for it. It's one of the best trailers in the history of cinema. It's great. It's absolutely great. takes you through a detailed walkthrough of the Bates Motel and the house. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Only Hitchcock could have pulled that off. But I guess for me, like when we look at these two films tonight, you know, a lot of times when you get to the third film in a horror series, it's usually you're just like, oh dear God. Like,
Yeah, it's usually the gas is out. It's running on
the
fumes.
gas is out, man. It's on fumes. And these two films prove that that's not always the case. They are exceptions to the norm. And I think both of them are outstanding exceptions. Halloween 3 is super fun. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, though, I really hold that film in high regard. And when it comes to horror, it is a top tier film for me. And it definitely, I was at the right age and I was at the right time. I was 12 when that film finally came to HBO. I didn't get to see it in cinemas because my parents would never take me. So it's on HBO. I couldn't wait to see it. My friends and I had snuck around videotapes of the first and the second one. So we were really stoked about it. And it just blew me through the back of my room. My little 18-inch TV just blew me through the back of the room. I couldn't get over just everything that this film does right. And even as a kid, I got it. Like, I was like, man, this is something special. Like, I could tell even then. And I watched it every damn chance I got where I could close my door, turn my volume down enough to where mom and dad couldn't hear it. And I would watch it every damn time I could. I adored this film. It just found me at the right time. And it was right there where Freddy was still scary, but we could all kind of chuckle at some of his one-liners because he kind of, that was the era of the one-liners. Thank you, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Commando, for really cementing that.
Oh man, that's the best 80 cheese ever.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love Commando. It's
favorite one-liner.
I showed
Remember
Lindsay
when
that,
I said I'd kill you last? I lied.
Yeah. Blow off some, let off some steam.
Oh yeah, dude, let off some steam, Bennett. Yeah, it's great. It's great. But for me, like that's where we're Freddy. We expected one-liners in movies at this point, man. We're all there because '87 is the year of the Running Man, so you get some great one-liners.
And Predator, wow.
And Predator, yeah. I mean, what a year '87 was. It's a great year. So tons of one-liners. Everybody just knew one-liners in films, but Freddy's one-liners work in this film because it's not basically trying to set up a joke. It's just that gallows humor that comes from the macabre situation that we're in. And that's why it works. From that point forward, it became cartoon character where even Robert Englund is showing up like on kids shows and stuff being interviewed because Freddy Krueger is just all over the place. Mm-hmm. He's in a video with the Fat Boys, which don't be wrong. Are You Ready for Freddy is a real banger. It's great. I love it. It's a great video. But it becomes a whole
number.
What's that?
Yeah.
Had a 1-800 number.
Yeah, he had a 1-800 number. He had the anthology TV series, Freddy's Nightmares. He had all that stuff going on. But here he was still scary. Here he was at his most creative. And again, for me, it's amazing that the third film in the franchise could actually be better than the first one. And yet for me, here we are. And it was never beaten in the rest of the run of Freddy films.
Right. And there are a lot of good points. Like a lot of good, I mean, every point that is argued is legit. Like it makes sense. And so I totally agree. The third, Dream Warriors is probably the best film out of the franchise.
Well, one thing
it's definitely the most fun, I would say.
Right.
I appreciate that all three of us are coming from the same mindset here of these are two movies that are very worth your time during spooky season. And that Halloween 3 is definitely not worthy of all the hate that it got.
No.
And Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is definitely worthy of the praise that it gets, and you need to check it out if you have.
I would put, if I had to say essentially the 3 Nightmare movies you need to watch, it would be 1, 3, and New Nightmare.
Yep, right there. Boom, done. That's it.
Totally agree.
That's all you need.
Halloween, I would have to be like, how would you like to choose your own adventure?
Yeah,
but I would definitely put 3 on there no matter what. But
I'd go 1, 2, 3, then probably 2018, then Halloween Kills, then 4, then H2O, 5, 6, Resurrection.
Yeah, Resurrection's definitely at the
And
bottom.
I haven't seen the new one yet, so I don't know where that would fall into play. That would be
For
my list.
me, it's somewhere in the middle. I will say it definitely takes some swings, maybe some interesting, but it does have an intriguing opening and it does give you that satisfying ending. But there is a section in the middle that doesn't quite work for me, but that's okay. The other people might think it's cool,
Well,
and
like
I'm
you
not
said, at
mad
least
at it.
they tried something different. And
Yeah,
again,
they did.
I'll always give someone a chance. I will always give them the benefit of the doubt if they at least try something new to breathe some life into a very old franchise at this point. I mean, hell, it's, we're, what, 40? Like,
It's 44 years now.
yeah, I mean, it's nuts. Like, here we are. But yeah, if you at least try something different, I'll at least give you the benefit of the doubt, man. I mean, this is definitely the newest film is definitely either you're in or you're not. Like, I really don't see a lot of middle ground on it. You're probably the most middle ground I've heard speaking.
I am the most middle ground from what I've read because people either love it or hate it.
It is absolutely divisive, but
I'm
at
kind
least
of like,
we all agree that the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot sucked. Jackie Earle Haley couldn't save that film.
Nope, he's the only good part of that movie.
He is the only good part. Seriously, he's great. He's really great. But that film is just trash.
I said this when we talked about the original with Adam. I really wish with the remake they would have gone in a wild direction and been like, what if Freddy was innocent? That would have been cool.
They might go with that. I really did.
They did set that up in the trailer, like that's what they were gonna do, and then they're like, "No, we're just gonna reinforce and even just blatantly say what was going on."
He's a pedophile, right?
Oh,
yeah. I agree. If you're gonna do something different with the character's background, make it that he was innocent, and then that makes his revenge that much more potent because you killed me, I was innocent. Now I'm coming after the innocence in your life, and I'm taking out your kids. Like that, it's the same concept. But it's a different take on it. It still is a guy who goes in kids' dreams and kills them. He's still doing it because he's getting revenge on their parents. But it's a different take on it at that point. That's a far more interesting take on it than just let's just ramp up the pedophile and just make you hate him that much more. Like, we already hate him. He's killing kids. We already hate him. You don't have to go that hard.
That's always been the undercurrent of his character because definitely he's very icky and sexual already.
And that's what's funny about seeing him become like an 80s cultural icon.
Right.
Like he's on, MTV. He's Robert Englund is on kids show showing up with the glove, and it's like this is a guy who murders children. And now he's got balls and he's got a 1-800 number and a Nintendo game. It's like, what? The 80s were such a cocaine-fueled time. They really were. Dude had a Nintendo game. Come on, man. Or are we gonna rank these? I know
everything had a Nintendo game back in the day.
Oh, do we want to rank the whole
well, I mean,
franchises?
You always have like is it a classic? Is it you had your tiers.
Well,
I wasn't sure if we were doing that tonight or not.
Oh, we can. I didn't come up with any creative rankings. I would put these two right under. They're not quite masterpieces for me, but they're very entertaining, very well-made films that I love to watch this time of year.
Oh, I agree.
Would say, I think I would say that about Halloween 3, but I think for an 80s slasher film, I think if you were ever to put the word masterpiece on any of them, for me, it would be Nightmare 3 and Nightmare 1. I think they both get the assignment, man. They know what they want to do, and they do it with absolute perfection as far as what they are, the time period they were made, the budgets that they had, the stories they were telling. I would put Nightmare 3. I'll stamp a masterpiece on it. I got no problem doing it for what it is. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece like Vertigo or Raging Bull or The Godfather, but for an 80s slasher film, I would call it a masterpiece of its genre and its time.
I can't argue with you for what it is, and especially of what that genre was doing in the 80s. This is definitely top tier.
Right.
Yeah.
Even on IMDb, it's got a solid rating. Even on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a solid rating. Even on the critic side.
Iconic is what I'll say. It's I mean, like you said, he was everywhere. He defined
Well, this is what made him a rock star.
slasher.
This is truly the film that did to me. This is where Freddy Krueger becomes the Freddy
This is
Krueger.
where Freddy Mania. This is probably at the point where they're like,
when
well,
you
they
think
probably
of horror,
waited till the franchise got taken over by New Line, but I bet someone was already like, all right, we got to, someone, Freddy versus Jason. Come on. You already know.
well,
This is
when
probably
you-
the
when-
moment where it started.
I guarantee you, if you go walk up to anyone on the street, not just anyone, but most people, and you say, name 5 iconic, when you think of horror movies, what do you think of?
They're going to say Freddy Krueger. They're going to say Jason.
Freddy,
They're probably going to say Hannibal
Jason,
Lecter.
Hannibal,
They might say Dracula,
Michael
but they'll
Myers.
probably say Michael Myers.
But the one definite we can all agree is that Freddy Krueger is going to be on that list.
He'll
Yeah.
say Freddy.
No doubt.
Yeah, there's no question he's on. He's probably one or number 2 they think of.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He's going to be in the top 2, guaranteed. If it's not Jason, it's Freddy. And then Michael Myers right behind that.
Right.
But Freddy is an icon, and this is the movie that made him that. And this is the movie that, again, this is Freddy at his absolute peak. This is the summit, the apex of what that character would be. Everything had been building up to this point. Now, there's a horrible slide down on the other side, but that's the whole problem. When you go up, you got to come down. But at this point, for me, this is it. It would never get better, either before or after. It would never be better than this movie. Other than maybe whatever Mike Flanagan might do with that attempt, that's the only thing that could possibly come close to it at that point. I just genuinely think it sits. It's like I've talked about on the show when we talked about Blade 2. It sits up there like Blade 2 for me. It knows what it is. It's very proud of what it is, but it elevates its concept to a level that nobody would have done. Nobody should have gone that hard, and yet they did.
That would be an interesting double feature. They're both fun movies.
I just watched Blade 2 with my kid this weekend. He'd never seen it before. And
wow. Had he seen the first one?
Nope, because I said you don't even need to, because the first one's
You
nowhere near
don't.
as good, and you don't need to because they're going to give you a recap. So let's just go with it. And he was blown away.
We watch that regularly. Like, that is such a great.
I stand by my top 5, like my whatever ranking we had for that night. I gave it masterpiece level. I stand by it. Blade 2 is a masterpiece. It knows exactly what it is.
I'll take Blade 2 over Blade 1 any day. As much as the
for
first
sure.
one,
Any day.
as much as the first one is a legend and an icon, and it's got all these great moments.
Well, you got Guillermo directing the second one. Like, no offense to Steve Norrington, but Guillermo's a master filmmaker.
Well, then, okay. So since we're wrapping up, so let's say with these 2 films, would you say that with Halloween 3 and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, would you put them at like? Would you say that they are at least for their franchises? Are they top tier entries? Are they mid tier or are they lower tier? Let's try.
Well, these are definitely top tier entries in both franchises, without a question.
Chris and Lindsay, where do you guys stand on it?
I would say top tier. Lindsay stepped out, but I would say top tier, and I guarantee you she would say, the same thing. I'll speak for her. So.
I would say we can all at least tell the people who see this, when you see it, these 2 movies come at high recommendations.
Right.
Take out the excess baggage about Michael Myers and just watch Halloween 3 as its own standalone thing. Don't think about anything else. Just think of it as Season of the Witch and nothing more. I think you'll dig it. For Nightmare on Elm Street 3, if you've seen the first one, I think it gives you more to lean on for this film. I do think you need to have the first one under your belt because of John Saxon and Heather Langenkamp. I think you need to have that. Watch the first one, watch the third one, watch New Nightmare. I think we can all agree that's a great trilogy for your spoopy time viewing. Those 3 films right there would be excellent, and Halloween 3 on its own merit would be an excellent addition to your spoopy time viewing list.
Oh,
yeah, and you don't even have to watch the other Halloween movies.
No, you don't.
Halloween 3.
I would even tell you don't do it. Just watch it on its own.
Pop Season of the Witch in.
in.
Be like, oh, this movie actually rules. Why did
It's
people
fun.
hate it?
Yeah, it's totally fun. Well, guys, as always, thank you for the time. I have had a blast talking about these 2 movies, and I always have a blast talking with you guys about any movies. But Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this discussion about two movies that, one, unfairly maligned, is finally getting its due, and the other one of the most transformative horror films of my preteen existence. One of the movies that, for me, cemented the idea of what a slasher could be in the 80s, and just really, to me, just set the bar. And it set it so high that, for me, nothing ever surpassed it on the slasher level.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
On, and it's always a blast getting to have you on and talk about some of our favorite movies. And I'm so glad we got to talk about these, especially for spooky season.
Yes.
And if there's anything else, let us know, because we are always down for talking anything really. So
yeah, dude, I'm in the same boat. Like it's whatever you guys want to go into next. If we want to talk about whatever, just come up with your next director or your next theme.
I have not forgot. We still need to hit up Last Starfighter. We will get to that. We will get to that at some point. I hope maybe in November. Let's plan for it in November at some point.
I'd be fine with that.
Starfighter. Next week we have. Let's see. We are doing Bram Stoker's Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
We're getting literary.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I saw both of them in the theater. Bram Stoker's Dracula was a stunning experience in the theater. I mean, like, wow, that is a like stage theatrical production of a film. It's gorgeous,
and it's a love letter to classic early cinema.
Yeah, I had the book on the making of it, and I swear to God, like every single type of special effect available at that time is used in that movie. Like, it's stunning. Even puppets, like stick puppets in the background for certain things. Like, it's insane. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I liked the atmosphere of it. It's a little wonky, but Kenneth Branagh is really great in it. Like, I'm not even going to front. He's really great in it. The makeup work for Frankenstein's monster is pretty damn cool, and De Niro being De Niro, it's fine. But I think everybody was expecting it to be sort of like a spiritual sequel to Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's not at all like what Coppola did at all. It is nothing like the Coppola production.
I haven't seen it in years.
So that one I haven't seen in a long time. I remember liking it when I watched it, but like I know it's not, it's nowhere near the class of Bram Stoker.
Yeah, it's nowhere
near. Helena Bonham Carter, she plays Bride.
She's Elizabeth. Yeah, that's probably. I don't know if they hooked up while making that or they were already a couple.
They were probably right there on the cusp, if not. Yeah,
because he left Emma Thompson for her.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Oh my! And what a surprise that was, because we thought he and Emma Thompson were just like the couple of couples. They were great. They're Shakespeare. We love them.
Yeah.
But no, that'll be a great discussion for you guys next week. Again, Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's a genuine feast of a film, man. There is much.
The soundtrack.
Oh my God,
all-time favorite soundtracks of all time.
And Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing is just one of the most inspired pieces of casting ever. I adore him in that movie. Like, goodness, I adore him in that film. That's good stuff all around. So I look forward to seeing you guys talk about that one. But let me know about The Last Starfighter. But gents, thank you for letting me be a part of this tonight. Happy spooky season to you guys. And goodness, just thanks for bringing a nice spotlight on two films that genuinely deserve it, man. I really appreciate you guys doing it, and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Absolutely. You're always welcome, and thanks for agreeing to come on and talk both of these movies and not just one of them.
Oh, I love them both. So it was when you said the threes, I'm like, man, what a great setup for the night. Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Well, everybody, keep enjoying your spooky season. Enjoy this beautiful fall weather we had today, and enjoy the rest of your week. Hope it goes by fast and your weekend takes forever to be over.
You can only hope, man. You can only hope. Gentlemen, have a great night.
You too. Thank you, Kevin. It was a blast.
As always.